Thank you again for joining us on our Wonderful Day in the Lord broadcast. We've been looking at the mysteries that are found in the New Testament. These mysteries reveal things to us that we could never figure out on our own. These are the secrets of God that He has revealed to us. And we spent the last 3 days looking at the mystery of God's wisdom, the very important one about life. Let's move on to something very different today. In chapter 11 of Romans, we're looking at the mystery that pertains to Israel and the hardening of Israel. Chapter 11, verse 25. But I do not want you, brothers, to be uninformed of this mystery. There's our word. So that you will not be wise in your own estimation. That a partial hardening has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. So here's the question. Now, each of the mysteries unravels some piece of information, something we want to know, something we can't figure out. And the question is, whatever happened to Israel? If you're a reader of the Bible, you know that Israel plays a major part of the Scriptures, and especially in the Old Testament. The Old Testament is Jewish literature, Jewish Scriptures, and it pertains almost exclusively, or at least wrapped around, the Jewish people. And we find all the way from Genesis chapter 12, when God called out Abraham to form the Jewish nation, going right to the end of the Old Testament, that the Jews are front and center in all things. In the Gospels, that begins to change as we find that the Jewish nation, and of course, when Jesus came, He came to His own people as born to a Jewish family. And it says in John 1:11, He came to His own, and His own did not receive Him. So the Jewish people rejected Christ, and the gospel witness all the way through all four gospels shows the consistent rejection by the Jewish people of Jesus Christ. And so that is where we leave the gospels, and Jesus has ascended. In the book of Acts, we find a transitioning away from Israel to a large extent, more and more towards the Gentile nations. Paul becomes an apostle to the Gentiles, and the Gentile world begins to receive the gospel as most of the Jewish people begin to back off. The epistles are mixed. We deal with Jews and Gentiles as well, but increasingly the Gentiles begin to monopolize the church. We have more Gentiles saved than Jews. And so the question is this: whatever happened to Israel? Is it still part of God's program? Does it have a future? Romans 9, 10, and 11 answers that question. And it's very in-depth studies here, but it does answer that question. So it speaks of the mystery of a partial hardening of Israel. God has not rejected His people. Matter of fact, look at verse 1 of chapter 11. I say then, has God rejected His people? May it never be. So has God rejected Israel? Is Israel done for as far as God is concerned? Well, Paul says, no, may it never be. God is not through with Israel. But we come now to this verse 24 after much other material, and he says, but for now, at this point in time, there has been a partial hardening of Israel so that they are not turning to the Lord in masses. They don't recognize the Messiah. If Jesus would come again today, they would do the same thing to Him. There's a hardening. They don't understand the things of God, and they're not interested in Jesus Christ. And a partial hardening has happened to them. But then he goes on to say that they're not done for. God is going to continue ultimately to work with them and bring them back to Himself. And He has a place for Israel. Matter of fact, verse 29 is a very precious verse to them and us. Paul writes this: for the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. And what he means by that is that God will never renege on what He promises. He gave Israel a calling. He gave Israel a gift. He said, you are my people. He says, no matter what it looks like right now, God will never revoke that which He had given them. They're still His people. He still has a plan for them. And so chapters 9, 10, and 11 reveal a mystery. Has Israel rejected their Messiah? Yes. Are they hardened against the things of the Lord? For the most part, yes, with certain exceptions. Has God kicked them to the curb? Not at all. He has a plan for them, and ultimately they will be brought back and they will be saved as a nation. We find that not only in the New Testament, and Paul talks about it here, but also in the Old Testament in Zechariah, for example, chapters 12 to 14. And that's why Paul, I think, ends this chapter in verses 33 to 36 with a magnificent worship service. He says, as I look at all the things that God does that are beyond our understanding, I just want to bow before Him and worship Him. And that should be our take as well. As we look at the things that God reveals to us, His mysteries, it should not lead us to being perplexed or upset. It should lead us to worship. It led Paul to worship. I trust it does you and I as well.